Hey folks, I hope that you guys are doing pretty well. So today is Monday, the 27th of October 2025, and in today's video I'm going to decipher for you in the book of Micah, chapter 4, okay? Now, because I do have a lot of pages here on my workbook, if you like, in today's video I'm only going to decipher for you from verse 1 all the way to verse 6, and then I'm gonna do another second part separate video, and it will be from verse 7 all the way to verse 13, okay? Now, Micah chapter 4, I believe, is a chapter that is actually quite complex. It's one that needs to be deciphered by elite Bible scholars, and even among them, it's actually for elite Bible scholars who can actually think outside the box. And you shall see why in a moment, okay? So this is for the I team, if you like, for the ISIS of biblical decipherers, okay? Now, I already have written my notes here. I'm using the King James Bible, so let's get straight into it, okay? Now, verse 1, but in the last days, notice plural here, we got an S here at the end. It shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so the last days covers the church age, the tribulation period, and also the millennial kingdom. So basically, what he's saying is that in the last days, it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord, in other words, this includes both the third temple, okay, and also the fourth temple as well, according to Ezekiel chapter 48, because it's talking about the last days plural here. So it's going to be two separate temples. The third temple, which Israel will rebuild at the end of the Ezekiel war, and then the fourth temple when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, according to Ezekiel chapter 48. Okay, so it's going to be two temples. So in the last days, it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains. Okay, so basically it's going to be, very soon after the Ezekiel war, we're going to see Israel rebuild the third temple on Temple Mount, if you like, on the top of the mountain, if you like. So when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, it's going to be the fourth temple, okay? So commentary. This prophecy is therefore related to both the third temple to be built in the church age after the Civil War of 38 and 39, and also to the future fourth temple, okay, because talking about here last days, so that's brutal, so it's got to be more than one temple, okay. So yeah, just to recap, so this prophecy is related to both the third temple to be built in the church age after the Civil War of 38, 39, and also to the future fourth temple that will be rebuilt for Jesus' millennial kingdom, according to the prophecies in Ezekiel chapter 48 and other prophets who have already prophesied regarding the rebuilding of the fourth temple, like myself, Gabriel, the prophet, Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, Haggai 2:9, Jeremiah 30, verse 18, and Zechariah chapter 2, verse 2, and also Zechariah chapter 8, verse 9. Okay, now verse 2. And many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the Lord shall go forth out of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So commentary, of course, this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. Now, why is this? Because he's saying that all these many nations are those that are going to be making it into the millennial kingdom after the judgment in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Okay, so and many sheep nations, in other words, like like it tells us in Matthew chapter 25, the separation of the sheep and the goat nation. So many sheep nations shall come and say, come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, okay, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways. So this can only be when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, in which people are going to go up to the fourth temple, so that he, Jesus, okay, will teach people of his ways. Okay, so this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. That's why that fourth temple is needed, according to the prophets of the fourth temple, like in Ezekiel chapter 48, Gabriel, myself here, Isaiah, and so on. Okay, so this can only happen when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom. This prophecy on verse 2. Okay, so basically, just to recap on the commentary, of course, this is a millennial kingdom prophecy in which those nations, or the sheep nations that might have through into the millennial kingdom, will come up to Jerusalem, to the fourth temple, to worship Jesus and God the Father. Okay, this prophecy can be linked to Isaiah chapter 2 verse 3, Isaiah 11:10, and Isaiah 11:10 reads, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, meaning Jesus, which shall stand for a name sign of the people. Okay, that's mainly the Jewish people. To it shall the Gentiles seek. Okay, and his rest shall be glorious. Okay, so Jesus is gonna be glorious, ruling from that fourth temple. Okay. See also Isaiah chapter 60 verse 3, and the Gentiles shall come up to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Okay, it's also linked to Isaiah 62 verse 2. See also Psalm 66 verse 4, Psalm 87 verse 9, Psalm 96 verses 7 to 9, etc., etc. See also Haggai chapter 2 verse 7. Okay, now, and that's because it's saying many nations. Okay, so it's not just the Jewish people. Okay, so that's why if you read, Isaiah 11:10, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, okay, and to it shall the Gentiles seek. Okay, so the Gentiles are gonna be going up, like it says here, many nations. Okay, I just thought I'd mention that. Now, verse 3, and he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off, and they shall beat the swords into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall learn war anymore. So, commentary. This is, of course, a millennial kingdom prophecy that needs to be broken down into two parts. The first part of the prophecy reads, and he shall judge among many people. Okay, like it says here, and he, Jesus, shall judge among many people. So who are these many people that would judge, that Jesus will be surrounded, judging, if you like? So we need to ask a question. So the question is, who are the other people that will judge alongside Jesus? The Bible tells us that David will be the prince according to Ezekiel 34, verse 24, and let me turn over the page. And of course, the 12 apostles will rule over the 12 tribes of Israel according to Matthew 19:28. Okay. Now, the second part of the prophecy reads, and they shall beat the swords into plowshares. Okay. It's all about peace throughout the reign of Jesus in the millennial kingdom. Now, mainly, and they shall be the source into plowshares. These days, mainly the Gentiles, it doesn't apply much to the Jewish people, because as soon as Jesus comes back to Israel for the millennial kingdom, According to Romans 11:26 and other prophecies, God is going to wipe away all the sins of Israel. Okay, the sins will be white as snow. Okay, and because of that, Israel will not sin anymore. But however, the Gentiles will sin because the prophecies tells us that those nations that don't serve Israel, they shall perish. These prophecies are in the book of Isaiah. Okay, so they shall be dispersed into plowshares. This actually applies to the Gentiles only. Okay, not to the Jewish people, but to the Gentiles mainly. Okay, now this prophecy is of course linked to Isaiah 2:4 and Isaiah 9:7. In other words, Jesus' garment and peace. Okay. See also Isaiah 11:4, Isaiah 40 verse 10. It reads, "The Lord God will come with strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him." Okay. See also Revelation 2:27 and 12:5, as Jesus will rule all nations with a rod of iron. Okay. See also Haggai 2:7, Psalm 66 verse 3, Psalm 66 verse 7, Psalm 99 verse 1, etc. etc. This Psalm 91 verse 1 is actually a good one. So, yeah, so Jesus will rule with a rod of iron, and there will be peace because Jesus is not going to allow nations to, to be out there warring against one another, So, this mainly applies to the Gentiles, not the Jewish people. This day is actually the Gentiles, not the Jewish people, because according to Romans 11:26 and Zephaniah and so on, and Isaiah, God is going to wipe away all the sins from Israel. They're going to sin no more. So that means that this day then belongs to the Gentiles. Okay? That's why I said to you that this biblical deciphering is for the I team. In other words, for elite Bible decipherers who can think outside the box. Exactly. Now, verse 4, but they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree. That's, of course, the Jewish people, okay? Because, uh, the context here is that, fig trees mainly belong in Israel, okay? And we know that vines as well. So, of course, there are fig trees all over the world and so on in many nations, but this, of course, mainly referring to the nation of Israel, and none shall make them afraid. Okay, so the context is that when Jesus comes back, the Jewish people, so to speak, will be in peace, sitting under the fig trees. They're going to be eating out of their own labor, commentary. But they is referring to the Jewish people only enjoying the fruit of their labor in the millennial kingdom reign of Jesus in Israel. Okay, so this mainly is a reference to the Jewish people, because it says that none are going to make them afraid, because don't forget that the reason that he's saying this is because the Jewish people are coming out of the tribulation period, and many had to flee and so on. Many died, under the sword, according to the prophecies in Luke chapter 21, verses 20 to 24, and so on. Okay, that's why none of them will make them afraid anymore. Okay, so basically, the Jewish people will have their farms, so to speak. They will have their vines and fig trees, and they will live from the fruit of their labor. Okay, that's what it's trying to say. Okay, so commentary, but they, like I said before, is referring to the Jewish people only, enjoying the fruit of their labor in the millennial kingdom reign of Jesus in Israel. It's also linked to the multi dispensational prophecy of Isaiah 1:19. Pay attention here, because this is for advanced Bible scholars. Now, Isaiah 1:19, it reads, "If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land." Okay, so that's why, the Jewish people, when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, no one is going to make them afraid anymore. They're going to have their vine and the fig trees and so on, and they're gonna eat the fruit of their labor. But this Isaiah 119, if you be willing and obedient, you shall eat, uh, you know, the good of the land. It's a multi-dispensational prophecy because under the law, if you think about it from Moses to Jesus, then the Jewish people were obedient, you know, during the time of Moses to Jesus. Think, for example, uh, when David was around, okay, when King David was around, he conquered, the land and so on, with his conquests. And yeah, the Jewish people were able to be obedient, and they were able to eat the good of the land. Okay, so this is why this Isaiah 119 is actually a multi-dispensational prophecy. And the Jewish people also, Israel became a nation in 1948 during the Church Age. And what's happening in Israel right now? They are also eating the good of the land, right? It also belongs to the tribulation period. Uh, on the first half of the tribulation period, under the Antichrist pact, okay? And that's because Israel will be fine. Israel will be one of the kings, during the first half of the tribulation period. So they will be fine under the peace treaty with the Antichrist. Now, on the second half of the tribulation period, it's going to be a little bit difficult for them. But under Revelation 12:14, they are going to be nourished for 3.5 years. So still, they're going to be eating. So they will still be surviving. And it also applies to the millennial kingdom, of course, because during the millennial kingdom, Jesus will be there. And so Isaiah 119 is actually a multi-dispensational prophecy. Okay. So this verse here is actually linked to Isaiah 119. Okay. If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. So it's multi-dispensational because the Jewish people ate of the good of the land under the law from Moses to Jesus. In the church age right now, they're also going to be able to do it during the first half of the tribulation period under the pact with the Antichrist, and also Israel being one of the kings alongside, the Antichrist, of course. And then the second half of the tribulation period under Revelation 12:14, they're going to be nourished anyway for 3.5 years, okay? And then when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, they will be in a much better position to keep eating much well, okay? Now, you can also link this prophecy to Isaiah 41:18, and it reads, I will open rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of the valleys. In other words, suggesting sources and supply of water for the people of Israel to irrigate and grow their crops, okay, so they can sit under the fig trees and the vines, okay. So you got to think outside the box to link this Isaiah 41:18. Perhaps the best prophecy of all can be found in Isaiah 51 verse 3. Some Bible scholars might have different opinions, that's fine. For the Lord shall come for Zion, he will come for all her wise places, and he will make her wilderness like Eden. In other words, suggesting that the Jewish people again, will be able to irrigate, the land and eat the fruit thereof, okay? And her desert like the garden of the Lord, okay? Joy and gladness shall be found therein, thanksgiving and the voice of melody, okay? In other words, the restoration of the land, planting, and so on, okay? You can also link this prophecy to Isaiah 62 verse 4, and it reads, neither shall thy land any more be termed desolate, but thou shalt be called Hephzibah, which means my delight is in her, okay? And the land Beulah, meaning married, for the Lord delighted in thee, and thy land shall be married. Okay, so in other words, yeah, the Jewish people will have their own land. According to Ezekiel chapter 48, Jesus is going to make sure that the land is partitioned amongst the tribes of Israel. Okay, people will have their own land. They will be married to their own land, if you like, each tribe, and they will be, having their own vines and fig trees and things like that. Okay. Now, another classic prophecy can be found in Isaiah 65, verse 22. They shall not build, and another inhabit. They shall not plant, and another eat. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Okay, now, like I said before, this is Isaiah 65:22. You can also link it to Ezekiel 47 and 48. In other words, the partition of the land to the tribes of Israel. Okay, so that they can eat from their own land, if you like. Okay, and enjoy the work of their hands. In their own land. Okay. You can also look into Jeremiah 31, verse 5. Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria. The planters shall plant and shall eat them as common things. Okay, so that's straightforward. Let me turn over the page now. See also Jeremiah 33, verse 9, Ezekiel 34, 26, Ezekiel 34, 29, Ezekiel 36, verses 34 to 35, Joel chapter 2, verses 21 and 22, Joel chapter 2, verse 26, Joel 3:18, and Zechariah 8:12. Okay, verse 5. For all people will walk, everyone in the name of his God. That's the Antichrist. Now, this is where you need the I-team of biblical decipherers. Okay, the elite who can think outside the box. The I-team. Okay. So for all people will walk, everyone in the name of his God, meaning the Antichrist, and I will let you know why in a minute. And we will walk, meaning Israel, in the name of the Lord our God, in other words, Jesus, forever and ever. And of course, this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. Now, I'm going to give you my commentary here. This is actually quite a complex prophecy to decipher that you got to think outside the box. Now, commentary. This is an early millennial kingdom prophecy, which means that upon the return of Jesus' second coming, he will find the nations or the heathen following after the Antichrist predominantly. Why is this? Because when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, what is he going to do? In the valley of Jehoshaphat, don't forget that he's going to put the Antichrist and the false prophet he's going to throw them alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. Okay. Now, why is it that when Jesus comes back, okay, everyone, uh, all the heathen will be following his God? Why are they going to be following the Antichrist, his God? Notice here that it's singular. God is not, it doesn't have an S at the end. So it's only God in lowercase, his God. That can only be the Antichrist. Now, why is this? Because it's going to be the Antichrist predominantly. People are not going to be following after the other gods, if you like. Because if you read Revelation 13:12, look what it says. And causeth the earth, okay, and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. Exactly. So that's the Antichrist, okay? And in Revelation 13:14, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Okay, so basically, the Antichrist will therefore be known as the God of the heathen, like it says here. Okay, why? Because of Revelation 13:12 and Revelation 13:14. Okay, So the Antichrist will therefore be known as the God of the heathen, and the heathen will no longer follow after their own traditionally God's idolatry. No, because when you think about this, you will probably think that the heathen or the nations will be following after their own false gods. No, notice that it doesn't have the S at the end, only singular. He's God, okay? So that can only be the Antichrist, because when you think about the context, look what Revelation 13:12 is saying, and causes the earth and men which dwell therein to worship the first beast. In Revelation 13:14, that they should make an image to the beast. And aside from that, because not only would they follow the Antichrist and take up the mark of the beast, as well as worship to him. That's right, okay? But according to Psalm 14, verse 1, it says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Okay. And this Psalm 14, verse 1 is actually for the second half of the tribulation period. I did a video on this. And even in Psalm 14, verse 3, it reads, they are all gone aside. There is none that does good. Okay. So only the Jewish people will follow the God of Israel, throughout the tribulation period, even until the return of Jesus' second coming. So I just want people to understand that where it says here, for all people will walk everyone in the name of his God, that's going to be the Antichrist. Because I just told you here that in Psalm 14, and this verse here is actually for the second half of the tribulation period. The fool has said in his heart that there is no God, and they have all gone aside. There is none that does good. So the fact that all these things are happening, this can only be the Antichrist, because it's going to enforce the mark of the beast, okay? And it's singular. He's God. Because they're going to worship him, he's going to be like the God with little g of the heathen, okay? Because this is going to be big time during the tribulation period, because read what Revelation 13:12 says, and causes the earth and then which dwell in to worship, okay? Worship his God, okay? And also that they should make an image to worship his God, and not to mention, the mark of the beast. And also, if you consider Psalm 14, verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God, there is none that does good, okay? So I put a little note here, all people, his God is singular, okay? The Antichrist, this is going to be the little God with a little g here. That's what all the people will be doing except the Jewish people, okay? Now, so what the Jewish people will face during the first half of the tribulation period is this. They will do the sacrifices in the third temple until the abomination of desolation happens. And Moses and Elijah will be sent to them as two witnesses, according to Revelation 11, verses 3 to 8, to prophesy and to inflict justice, such as the power to shut heaven, as per Revelation 11:6, to turn water into blood, and to smite the earth with plagues as often as they will. Okay? Now that's the first half of the tribulation period, but nonetheless, the Jewish people will be, um, you know, they will be following God, the God of Israel, nonetheless. Now the second half of the tribulation period, Israel is to anoint their own prophet, whose mission is to unite the Jewish people unto Jesus Christ. Okay, and so it says here in the prophecy, uh, you know, that and we will walk, that's Israel, in the name of the Lord God forever and ever. So this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. So the fact that Israel is going to anoint their own prophet, this will help with their cause. Okay. Also, in the second half of the tribulation period, the everlasting gospel will be preached by the angel unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, according to Revelation 14 verse 6. Okay. Now, the second part of the prophecy here on verse 5, where it reads, "We will walk in the name of the Lord, God forever and ever." This is linked to many prophecies, such as Isaiah 9:7, the increase of his garment and peace upon the throne of David. Okay, think also of Isaiah 43 verse 10. You are my witnesses. That's worshiping God. Okay, think also of Psalm 118 verse 26. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And of course, because Israel, will anoint their own prophet, whose mission is to unite the Jewish people unto Jesus Christ. Okay, and the small prophecies and these, I'm just giving you a few here. But in the millennial kingdom, of course, the Jewish people will walk in the name of the Lord. Because not only they're going to have their own prophet, but because Jesus, uh, you know, will be there to provide his garment and peace. Okay, in the throne of David, and the Jewish people will be his witnesses, and they're gonna be saying, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," and there's so many others. But I can't give you everything because it'll be a long video. Okay. Now, verse 6. In that day, highlighted in yellow here, saith the Lord, will I assemble her that holdeth, and I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted. Okay, so this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. Don't be confused by the wording. It's pretty straightforward. So yeah, this is a millennial kingdom prophecy upon the arrival of Jesus' second coming. Basically, to translate this prophecy into plain English, in other words, all this wording, let me tell you what it's saying. So Jesus is saying, once I have arrived in Israel, okay, in that day, saith the Lord, okay, and I will assemble. So that can only happen during the millennial kingdom. So, but there's more to that. There's more. That's why now this is for people who think outside the box. Now, this is a millennial kingdom prophecy upon the arrival of Jesus' second coming. To translate this, Jesus is saying, once I have arrived in Israel and have finished performing my judgments in the valley of Jehoshaphat according to Joel 3:2, I will assemble her, Israel, if you like, that have made a stop, if you like, in living normally. Okay, that's because of the tribulation period, due to the abomination of desolation, as per Daniel 9:27, and having to flee and be captured, according to Luke 21 verses 20 to 24, and was afflicted by me, Jesus, according to Jeremiah 30:15. In other words, what do you cry for your affliction? That's what he's saying in Jeremiah 30:15. Now, you need to realize that in that day, saith the Lord, I will assemble her that holdeth. Now, basically, what you need to understand is that there's going to be a special day, okay, says the Lord, that I will assemble her. Now, when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, he cannot assemble Israel immediately. No. And why is that? Because first he has to make the judgment in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Jesus needs to get rid of the enemies of Israel. Okay? So while Jesus gets rid of the enemies of Israel, he cannot assemble Israel immediately. No, that's gonna take a little bit of time. So when will be that day that the Lord will assemble Israel that holdeth? Holdeth means that In other words, saith the Lord, that I will assemble her that halteth. In other words, Israel has made a bit of a stop. Okay, halt means stop. Now, why is this? Because Israel has just come out of the tribulation period, so they have been halted. And I will gather her that is driven out. In other words, the Jewish people were driven out in the second half of the tribulation period, with the abomination of desolation and so on, and they had to flee, and God is going to nourish them for 3.5 years. And also, when Jesus comes back, they will be coming back anyway, okay? And her that I have afflicted, in other words, that Jesus afflicted the nation of Israel, so that they went into Daniel's 70th week, okay? And Jesus afflicted, the nation of Israel according to Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 15, okay? Because of the sins, standing in the back with the Antichrist and so on, But the main idea here, to be fully assembled, Israel needs to be fully established first, okay? There will be a day when Israel will be fully assembled. Assemble means to put together, So, to be fully assembled, Israel needs to be fully established, okay? And divide the land of Israel according to the tribes of Israel, as per Ezekiel 47, verses 21 to 23, and Ezekiel chapter 48, in other words, the rebuilding of the fourth temple. So this will also include the new fourth temple. So assemble means to put together, okay? And so this prophecy will be fulfilled when all these things are done exactly, folks. So don't think for one moment that this prophecy is going to come to pass as soon as Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom. No, because it's saying here, there's going to be a day. In that day, saith the Lord, will I assemble her that halteth. Now, before Jesus assembles Israel, that has made a stop, okay? Jesus first needs to get rid of the enemies of Israel in the valley of Jehoshaphat, according to Joel 3:2. And then, you know, the, Jesus needs to divide the land, and to give it to the tribes of Israel, as per Ezekiel 47, verses 21 to 23, and also Ezekiel chapter 48. And he needs to do this. Why? To assemble them. In other words, to put them together. Okay? And also they need the fourth temple. That's part of the assembly. Why? To worship Jesus. Okay? They cannot function, fully until Jesus assembles them completely. That will mean the partition to the tribes of Israel, according to Ezekiel 47 and chapter 48, and that includes the fourth temple as well. Now, once all these things are done, this prophecy will be fulfilled. In other words, that the Jewish people will be assembled. Okay, in that day there will be a day when all that will be done. In that day, saith the Lord, will I assemble her that halteth. Okay, so this prophecy can only be fulfilled once Jesus has fully assembled Israel. I will assemble her, okay, that halteth, okay. By assemble, it means that, he needs to give the orders, so that each tribe, will have their own land, and that, and that the fourth temple is ready. This is all part of assembling, the Jewish people, so that they can live in peace and worship God like He wants to. And so yeah, in that day, saith the Lord, I will assemble her that halteth. Okay, in other words, in that day, says the Lord, I will put together Israel with everything that entails, because they have made a stop, if you like, due to the tribulation period. and I will get a horde that is driven out. In other words, it's gonna bring back all the Jewish people from all over the world. Okay, especially if you read the prophecies in Isaiah and herd that I have afflicted. Of course, Jesus has afflicted Israel during the tribulation period. Daniel 70th week, Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, and of course, Jeremiah 30, verse 15. Okay, so that's it for the time being, folks. I have to get on from verse 7 to 13 on my next video. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll talk to you all later.